The world which once viewed Africa as a dumping ground is now watching in amazement. We are turning this waste into millions of dollars worth of treasure. President Ibrahim Traoré's words resounded through the newly inaugurated facility, a statement of defiance and triumph. Before him, on what was once a festering electronic waste dump on the outskirts of Ouagadougou, stood a marvel of engineering and innovation. Spanning over 12 hectares, it was a gleaming complex of processing lines and storage facilities, a testament to a new vision. And in his hands, he held the proof. Bars of pure gold, 99.99% pure, born not from a mine deep in the earth, but from the discarded refuse of a globalized world. It seems like alchemy, a modern-day miracle. But to understand the sheer scale of this achievement, you must first descend into the hell from which Burkina Faso has so audaciously escaped. For decades, the continent had served as the world's unofficial dumping ground. A toxic, unrelenting flow of millions of tons of discarded computers, broken smartphones, obsolete televisions, and other devices from wealthy nations found its way to African shores through both legal and illegal channels. Around Burkina Faso's major urban centers, these electronic graveyards proliferated, scarring the landscape and creating a profound environmental and health crisis. Here, in these modern-day wastelands, desperate workers, often including children, toiled in apocalyptic conditions that defied belief. The air was thick with the acrid, black smoke from burning cables, a crude method to melt away the plastic and get to the copper within. Men and boys, their hands and faces stained with soot, would use hammers to smash circuit boards and bathe the components in open vats of acid to leach out microscopic flecks of valuable metals. They were exposing themselves, their families, and their communities to a horrifying cocktail of lead, mercury, cadmium, and other dangerous pollutants. The immediate consequences were chemical burns and respiratory illnesses. The long-term effects were neurological damage and cancer. The conventional wisdom, whispered in the corridors of global power and accepted by many within Africa itself, held that nations like Burkina Faso were trapped in a cruel paradox. They faced a false choice. Either ban the lucrative waste trade entirely, losing the limited and hazardous economic activity it generated, or continue to allow the dangerous informal processing with its devastating human and environmental toll. It was a dead end, a curse with no apparent escape. But then, a new leader emerged who refused to accept these terms of surrender. The problem is not the waste itself, President Traoré declared, his voice cutting through the years of resignation. The problem is who controls the processing of this waste, who captures its value, and who bears its costs. We are going to transform this equation completely. This was not just a political promise, it was the genesis of a uniquely African solution. The Sustainable Metals Management (SSM) project emerged from a powerful partnership between the Burkinabe government, the National Institute of Scientific Research, and a network of community cooperatives. It was built on three core, unshakable principles: community ownership, technological sovereignty, and environmental justice. This was not going to be a foreign aid project or a copy-paste of a Western model. It would be a Burkinabe solution to a global problem. It was an audacious vision, but how do you turn a philosophy into a functioning, profitable, and revolutionary machine? The answer was found in a stroke of engineering genius and a deep belief in their own people. What makes our approach revolutionary is not just what we do, but how we do it, explained Dr. Fatimata Ouedraogo, the lead engineer on the project and a specialist in metallurgical processes. We've designed systems that are appropriate for our economic reality, our available workforce, and our specific waste stream. The secret lies in an alchemy for the 21st century, a process brilliant and profoundly adapted to Burkina Faso's context. It begins with the people. Instead of operating in the shadows, the informal waste pickers were organized into cooperatives. They were given proper protective equipment, extensive training, and fair, structured compensation. They were transformed from marginalized waste pickers into skilled and respected environmental technicians. The human impact was immediate and profound. Adama Sawadogo, who had worked in the toxic dumps for 7 years, recounted the change. "Before, I would burn cables to get the copper, and the smoke would make my chest hurt for days," he said. "Now I have protective gear, a regular salary, and health insurance. Most importantly, I have dignity. Once the e-waste arrives at the facility, it undergoes a sophisticated sorting process. Here, another innovation shines. Instead of a fully automated system that would eliminate jobs, the SSM facility employs a hybrid approach. Our system is labor-optimized, not labor-minimized, noted Dr. Ouedraogo. Where it makes sense to use automation, like for detecting different metal types, they use it. Where human judgment and dexterity are superior, they employ people. The result? A system that creates 4 times as many dignified jobs as a fully automated equivalent, while remaining economically viable. But the true miracle, the heart of the entire operation, is the metals recovery process. Traditional e-waste recycling relies on either high-temperature smelting, which is energy-intensive and highly polluting, or hydrometallurgical processes that use harsh, dangerous chemicals. The SSM facility pioneered an innovative bio-hydrometallurgical approach. Incredibly, they are using strains of bacteria native to Burkina Faso, microorganisms that the project's microbiologist, Dr. Moussa Konate, and his team isolated from old mining sites where they had naturally evolved to leach metals from rocks. Now, these tiny, living allies have been optimized to do the same for e-waste. They are cultivated in bioreactors and, in an environmentally friendly process, they metabolize the toxic components of the circuit boards, releasing gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and copper. It's a system that requires far less energy than smelting, produces fewer toxic byproducts, and, crucially, relies on locally cultivated bacteria, completely breaking the dependency on expensive imported materials and foreign patents. The results of this homegrown alchemy were staggering. A single ton of smartphones, they found, contained up to 100 times more gold than a ton of high-grade gold ore, making this urban mining potentially more lucrative than traditional extraction. In its first 6 months of operation, the facility had processed approximately 3,000 tons of electronic waste, recovering precious metals valued at over $15 million. Projections suggested that at full capacity, the SSM project could generate $50 to $60 million annually while employing more than 2,300 people directly and thousands more in the collection networks. But the numbers, as impressive as they are, don't tell the whole story. Dr. Asatu Diallo, a public health specialist who had documented the horrors of the old system, noted the transformation. In communities where we've shifted from informal to formal processing through the SSM cooperatives, we're seeing dramatic reductions in respiratory problems, chemical burns, and heavy metal poisoning, she reported. Children who were once working in those dangerous conditions are now in school. And for women like Fatimata Zongo, who now serves as the coordinator for a 200-member women's cooperative, many of them single mothers, it represents a revolution in social standing. At the inauguration ceremony, there was no traditional ribbon for dignitaries to cut. Instead, hundreds of cooperative members participated, each cutting a small section of a long, recycled metal chain that encircled the facility. Today, I cut this chain as a business leader, not as someone who has to beg for work, she declared, her voice filled with pride. The symbolism was unmistakable. They were breaking the chains of exploitation while celebrating their collective achievement. This project was designed as a direct challenge to a global economic system that had exploited Africa for centuries. The political and economic shift was profound. As Finance Minister Ibrahim Sanu explained, when a foreign company extracts gold from their land, the government typically receives a mere 3 to 5% in royalties. But when they extract gold and other metals from e-waste at the SSM facility, 100% of the value stays in their economy. This is the difference between extraction and sovereignty, he stated powerfully. The world started to notice. Environmental organizations praised the initiative as a groundbreaking model. More telling, however, was the reaction from neighboring African nations. Within months, delegations from Ghana, Senegal, Mali, and Côte d'Ivoire had visited to study the model, determined to replicate it. As Ghana's environment minister noted after his visit, what Burkina Faso has shown us is that we don't need to wait for foreign companies or aid organizations to solve our waste problems. We have the knowledge to develop our own solutions. This was the core of President Traoré's vision: technological sovereignty. For too long, he argued, Africa had been told it could only be a user of technology, not a creator. The SSM project proves this narrative false. It was designed by Burkinabe engineers. The intellectual property belongs to the Burkina Faso Scientific Research Institute, not a foreign corporation. We made a fundamental decision, explained Dr. Ouedraogo, that this would not be a black box technology that we simply operate but don't understand. We can maintain it, modify it, and improve it ourselves. This approach took longer. Critics said they were reinventing the wheel. But as Dr. Konate responded, now we have not just a facility, but the knowledge and capacity to replicate it. That capability is far more valuable in the long term than a turnkey solution that we don't fully understand or control. This sovereignty extended to the project's financing, which relied on government investment and domestic banks, specifically avoiding foreign loans that often come with controlling strings attached. The facility belongs 100% to the people of Burkina Faso, 60% through the government and 40% through the worker cooperatives. The project is already catalyzing an entire ecosystem of innovation. Phase 2 is under construction in another city, and a network of smaller satellite facilities is being developed. The University of Ouagadougou has established a new department of circular economy and resource recovery. A small business incubator has been set up next to the facility, where entrepreneurs like Ibrahim Traoré, a young engineer who returned from studies in Europe, are building new enterprises, like producing solar chargers from recovered components. I had job offers from tech companies in Europe, he explained, but I came back because this is where the real innovation is happening. This is about more than technology and economics. In the heart of West Africa, it has become a symbol of reborn national pride, a modern-day continuation of the vision of Thomas Sankara, the nation's revolutionary hero from the 1980s who championed self-reliance. President Traoré made this connection explicit. Sankara told us that we must produce what we consume, he said. Today we take this philosophy further. We are even producing from what others have consumed and discarded. This is the ultimate self-reliance. Elder Mumuni Sawadogo shared a story from a community meeting. My granddaughter came home from her school visit and told me, "Grandpa, we are turning trash into gold." The pride in her voice, that is worth more than all the gold in the facility. As the sun sets over the complex, its solar arrays gleam, powering a microgrid that serves nearby neighborhoods. The alchemy taking place inside is not just metallurgical. It is social and political, transforming relationships of dependency into partnerships of equality, and changing the narrative about what Africa can achieve. Prominently painted on the facility's wall is a slogan that captures the essence of this revolution. Yesterday's waste, today's resource, tomorrow's prosperity. This transformation is not just possible, it is already underway.